Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to our presentation. My name is Jessica Thompson.
My name is Jordan McDonald.
I'm Renee Bram.
And I'm Elizabeth Georgie.
And today we're going to be talking about why you should invest $5 million into our company. So part one is why it happened. This was how we got the results that we did. And so our market was stagnant. It was difficult to grow sales at first, and that's why it was even more fulfilling and impressive when we were able to get the results that we did. But as you can see, it's a slow growth in our type of market. And then for next, our product. So as I mentioned, we're Makos bikes. We have the fastest, most sustainable product on the market is what we like to say. Our bikes are both popular and affordable, and they come in two styles. So simple Model A and premium Model B. So you'll hear a lot of A's and B's throughout our presentation. Thank you. And so for our initial strategy, we definitely did change this a little bit by the end. We learned some hard lessons, but our initial strategy was to hire only those with scores of 8+. We wanted really to have the top sales reps that we could get. Also to focus more on product B because it was a higher margin product. So we definitely wanted to focus on that to keep our profits as high as possible. We also wanted to keep commission high to motivate our salespeople to sell as much as possible. And we did try to offer them a little bit more than their expectations because, salary is important in terms of security, but we did want their commission to motivate them at the same time. So it was really a balance between salary and commission. And we did hold a small selling contest of $5,000 every quarter. And we tried to maintain a competitive price. We didn't want to be the most expensive in the market, but we also didn't want to be the lowest price in the market. And Renee will be talking to you about part two, what happened in our first few quarters.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica. So I'm going to be talking about the first 3 quarters. So here's quarter one, which we like to call a shot in the dark. It's when we were getting started, figuring out the ropes of the game and kind of understanding what it was like for us to be sales managers. So some of the important decisions that we were looking at was what product to put some emphasis on. So we originally did start with a 60% emphasis on B and 40% on A. We wanted to see if it was something where we could focus on a premium product and not so much of A, and maybe that would help our profits. The biggest issue where we start to see some more of was with our inventory costs. So we produced about 270 A and 210 B the first quarter, which was okay for us. We had about 7.4 thousand in inventory costs, and we were still negative in profit for this quarter as well. We moved around a couple of our sales reps. We sent out and got new hires, and moving into quarter two. So quarter two is where we see some of our growing pains. We were understanding, okay, this is what we need to do. Focusing on B is working for us, but now let's look at pricing. So we raised our prices to $3,800 for A and $5,800 for B. And this is also where we raised commission to see if maybe giving them that competitive commission would help them sell some more as well. We put out more offers, we hired them on, and then we sold a little bit less this quarter. So what happened there was we produced more than we needed to. And this is where we started seeing the issue of our inventory costs really go up. So we had about 27,000 in inventory costs, and we were still negative in profits here as well. Moving into the third quarter, which is our second part of our growing pains, we decided to lower our commission a little bit. Maybe that would have helped our costs. We weren't 100% sure yet. And then we upped internal selling to 18% to help with profit as well. We produced a little bit less, but still much more than we needed to because our sales were still pretty low. So our inventory costs again went up this quarter to about 31,000. And that was really hurting us with costs. We were lacking with offers. No one was really taking them at that time. This was actually the first quarter we had an offer rejected. And again, we were still negative in profits, but going into quarter four, Liz is now going to talk about how we started to fix that and realize what we were really doing wrong those first 3 quarters.
Okay, so Q4 we call finding our stride, because this is really where we're seeing all the data come in, and we want to make some bigger decisions and figure out our footing. So we decided we're going to move some of our sales reps around to different territories, hoping that this will give them the push to maybe increase their sales. We actually messed around a little bit with their salary. If you see, we lowered John's salary a little bit because we raised commission, and we were hoping that that would push him to go out and get sales on his commission. We stopped producing inventory because we had so much leftover inventory. And this is really where we see the gap closing in our profit loss. If you notice, in the last quarter, we have negative about 400,000 in profit loss, and now we're still in negatives, but negative 95. So we are really getting close to getting into the positive. So that's when we really started noticing that, okay, the decisions that we're making, they're leading us in the right direction. And it was definitely a good direction because we were now #1 in market share. So we wanted to make sure that we maintain that. And we see that continue on in Q5. So Q5, our first successes, we see that those changings are paying off. We decide to raise our commission a little bit more. We're hoping that this will continue giving our sales reps that push to continue going out and getting sales. We produce 0 of A because we're noticing that B is really just taking off. That's our focus, our premium product that we want to focus on. And we even increase our emphasis to 70% on product B. And this is where we now see our first profits. So we become the first company to see profits. We gain 295K in profits. We are maintaining #1 in market share and in profit. And then in Q6, we see a little bit of a step back coming. We notice that competition is heating up. We see other companies are now kind of catching on to what we're doing, and that it's not as easy as we thought it was going to be, having to compete against these other great companies. So we ask for more offers. We're trying to hire a few more people, but really we're focusing on maintaining our regions and our pricing because we saw that that was really working for us. And again, we want to push emphasis on product B. So we're continuing that increase on sales in product B, and our profits are increasing. We remain #1 in market share, but now we see that we're actually #2 in products or in profit share because companies are catching on. And then in Q7 is when we really see the setback. As I mentioned, competition has increased. So this is really the quarter that we took to make our final big decisions and see how we can go ahead in the next round. So we messed around with salary yet again. We were trying to figure out how we can make our sales reps happy to increase our sales. We decided to actually lower our pricing for our products because we noticed that we had it maybe a little bit too high compared to the competition, and that might be what had set us back a little bit in the last quarter. And we maintained our #1 in market share, but we were hoping that in the next quarter we would be #1 in profit share as well. So that's why we had made those previous changes to lowering our prices. And then you'll see that in Q8, it worked out because we were able to be #1 in market share and in profit share. And we really think that the biggest thing that was focusing on product B for us, we think that emphasizing product B was the biggest thing that helped us, and also really working with our sales reps, being able to move them from different territories. As you saw, John A was actually one of our worst sales reps, but we decided in the last minute that we were going to move him from his original territory, and we saw that that really helped him in his sales. So these are tips that we wanted to take with us into the future. I'm actually going to let Jordan now talk about what we learned and how we can improve.
Couple of questions first.
Yes.
Because this was good. It was very succinct and right on target. John Apple, whatever his name is.
Yes.
Turns out to be a total dud in Region 1, which is where he's from.
Yes.
Have you guys figured out anything about him? That he's not a New Yorker or something?
Well,
because I see this consistently.
Yes. So for us, Pat, we identified that Region 1 actually was not growing in sales a lot. So we looked at our industry and regional forecast, and we identified that it was really Region 4 that was maybe where he needed to be because there was some excess in sales there that could be taken. And I want to say his sales went up from 44 to 74 units. So he sold a lot more when we moved him to 4, but it wasn't specifically, we did look at his resume, but we didn't specifically see anything that would draw him to Region 4. It was more just so we thought he'd have a better chance because there was more demand there.
And to add on to what Jessica said, I think we found that a lot of our sales reps, we had hoped that they'd want to be in their region, but we noticed that when we moved them away from their home region, they actually started enjoying it more and improving their sales, which was an interesting phenomenon because we thought they'd enjoy being in their home region, but it turns out moving away was a bigger push for them.
Well, I would say, you have many different things in play there. I think that's true for John. And I think the success in moving them may have been more due to your heavy focus on B, to your pricing. It may not have been just the move.
Yeah.
I would never look at one thing and say that's it.
I definitely agree, Pat. I think also the regional competition was a big factor as well, because we got our sales force pretty quick. And so there was many regions where there were no people at all. And so when we moved them in there, we got that first market share and we got the first customers. And I think that was a big factor in their success as well.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about what we learned. I'm going to talk about our sales reps' performances first. So as you can see, Kalanda and James both struggled in their home regions in Q2, which is kind of like what we discussed. We ended up moving them to regions 7 and 9 after they were retrained in Q3. Kalanda made about 787 units between quarters 4 and Q8. We set the database between quarters 4 to Q8 because we found that by Q4 we were able to get all of our sales reps hired, and that way it would be a fair and accurate database. So John A was overall our weakest rep, and when we moved him from his home region, region 1 to region 8, in the 8th quarter his sales rose by 30 units. We understand now that that may not have as big as an impetus as it could, but in the future we do plan on retraining John and Henry. In the next slide, so for the characteristics of a strong and weak reps, we discovered that our strong and weak reps actually had similar characteristics. They all had business degrees. None of them had prior sales experience except for Henry, who did generate a small sales plan for a small company, but he didn't have experience within the field. For their characteristic scores, they all scored 10s and 8s. And then when they were moved from their home regions, 7 and 9 were the most successful. We see now that maybe basing off characteristic scores may not be the best approach because, as you can see, John A and John Henry, who both scored 10s and 8s, still didn't succeed as well. And we wondered maybe that's because a candidate can be perfect on paper, but then once it's put out into the field, they don't succeed as well because maybe they lack the people skills or they struggle with building relationships. So that's something that we noticed as well, and that we're going to definitely consider within the next few quarters.
And one more thing, that none of them took sales courses.
That's another factor. You got to have that experience. So for compensation, we did have the highest commission for our sales reps, but we found that maintaining the competitive commission rate is a steady motivator for our sales reps, especially since we put so much emphasis on our product B, which is our premium. When hiring our sales reps, we offered $5,000 to $15,000 more than the university's average compensation. We wanted to show them that we truly valued them and wanted to motivate them to even make more money. This decision has led to higher sales performances and the highest market share of our industry at 33%. And for territory placement, initially, as Liz mentioned earlier, we tried to keep our reps in the home regions. We figured that the familiarity with the region itself and the people would help benefit. However, we soon noticed that that wasn't exactly the case. Our top sales reps, Kalanda and James, were both in non-home regions, and whether that may have an effect, whether it may have effect to the fact that it was that they moved the regions or that they were retrained, that could be something to consider also. We then began to maximize territory coverage by having one rep in each region. This increased our market share to 33% as well. And then when we tried to move accordingly to demand, so as we mentioned earlier, John A was moved from region 1 to region 8, and this increased his units by 30, and we predict that it will keep moving up as well.
Question, I don't know if you have the answer to this. There is a compensation expectations report did you look at that and compare it to the compensation you were providing?
We actually did not. We mostly looked at what the other competitors were providing and really compared off that. We did offer a very high salary in comparison to our, I think only business as usual. The second team offered a higher salary, and that was because they were focusing more on salary than commission, so just kind of a different approach. But we actually never got the expectations report. Perhaps in retrospect, we should have at least once, just to kind of see what their expectations were. But no, we mostly just based it off of the average of their universities. So that was perhaps in hindsight a mistake, but yeah.
Especially since sometimes our offers would be rejected, and maybe that has something to do with it.
That's actually something we should do for ICSC, thinking about it. Anyway, but yes, got that report, sorry.
For pricing, we were the first to increase our prices. We became the baseline for the market pricing. Our other competitors either used identical pricing to us, like Group 7 and 9, or they undercut our pricings, like Team 8. Occasionally, we would lower our prices in certain quarters and then raise them again. And then we learned that because our product quality, the competence within our sales reps, and dominant market share, we could charge a premium for both our products. And in the next few slides, you'll see how that paid off. So Jessica is going to talk about product emphasis and forecast.
Thank you so much, Jordan. So as we kind of touched on a little bit already, we really found the most success by focusing on B because that was our higher margin product. So we started off with a 60-40 emphasis on B, so 60 on B, 40 on A, and then by the end of it, we were at 75% on B and at 25% on A. So we really started to increase it as we saw more and more success with that method. And there was a cost to it though. So when we increased it from 70% emphasis on B to 75%, just that small 5% increase had quite a big difference in terms of our sales and also market share. So it basically cut our sales of A in half. We went from selling 483 of A to 202. So more than in half it cut it. So it dropped by 58%. And then it also hurt our market share a little bit. However, we did find this sacrifice worth it because our sales for B increased so much that it made up for that, and our profits increased by 62%. So even though it slightly, dinged our market share and our sales of A did drop, because our sales of B increased so much, it ended up being well worth it to increase the emphasis.
Okay, one more time, I would warn you, never look at one factor as the only thing. It was probably a major piece, but definitely not the only thing.
Definitely. And then for forecasting, we really never identified a good forecasting method. However, we did analyze what was the best at predicting our unit sales. So first up, for our unit sales of A, we identified that the average absolute change trend was the most accurate for forecasting. It only had a mean absolute percentage error of 21%. So still pretty high, but the lowest of all the errors. And then for a worst method, moving average was really the worst at predicting unit sales of A because we had a mean absolute percentage error of 51%. So kind of between a rock and a hard place with that. But for, oh, were you going to say something, Pat?
Well, I was going to say, you were in a market that was varying significantly.
Yes, definitely.
Forecasting is by the seat of your pants, and that shows it.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. Especially you can see with the next slide that another method that was also not very good in terms of predicting unit sales of B was exponential smoothing with an alpha of 0.2 was really not effective with a 50% error, 56% error. But like you said, the market was varying so much just from period to period based on our decisions, based on our competitors' decisions, and sales were really unpredictable. So it was very difficult to forecast, but we did notice that the average absolute change trend was the most accurate for forecasting both A and B. So that was interesting. And then for the next slide, Renee's going to talk to you about some of the lessons that we learned overall.
Okay, so this is pretty much a recap of some things that we learned throughout this 8 quarters and processing what happened. We noticed that we wanted to keep our commission high, but not too high. We wanted something that would give them a little bit of a competitive edge, but not to where they're so stuck on commission that they don't have a salary to hold themselves down. And then the other notice was to only hire enough to have full regional coverage. There was no reason for us to have one quarter that had 10 sales reps in it and another that had 0. We might as well have at least one rep in each region to where we have that higher market share as we did. We maintained #1 for that, and we continued to make profits within each region. We also wanted to focus on that high margin product, which we did with focusing on B. As Jessica had said, the average absolute change trend was the most accurate for us in a stagnant market. Again, it wasn't great, but for what we had in that market, it was what we used. And then move sales reps as needed. As we had said, we relocated people to where we felt they would be making the most sales for themselves and for our company. Again, maintaining competitive pricing where we had the other teams kind of following our lead, it seems like. When we would change a price, most of the other teams would also adjust themselves accordingly as well. We also noticed that we can charge a premium because of that no regional competition. And then making sure that we were aware of our inventory and overtime. We recognized that inventory was a huge issue for us in those first 3 quarters. So we completely stopped producing when we didn't need to and just used what we already had made beforehand. And that helped us so much with profit, where we had that jump from about 400,000 negative in profit, went down to 95 negative. And then on the next slide, so what does the future look like for us? This is a prediction of the next 2 years for us. So it seems like there is still an increase. There's a little bit of a dip there, but overall, it does seem like we're still going to be growing as a company and making good sales on our bicycles and continuing to hopefully stay #1 in profit and #1 in market share as well.
Now on this slide, quarter 8, are those your actual sales?
They are not, no. So
No.
for unit B, it was, I want to say it was 1188. And then for A, because of our emphasis on B was so high, we sold 202, I want to say, of A. So it was substantially different. It really is just an estimate.
Okay. And where did these estimates come from?
These came from our market research. So for our very last quarter, we, on your recommendation, we got the industry sales forecast to see what the future of our market was going to be like. And so that's where these numbers come from.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think if we were to at least adjust our numbers to be accordingly, it would probably still match up. Just number-wise would be different than what's there.
And maybe they'll be even higher since we know what to focus on when hiring sales reps now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why are we asking for your investment today? We've had solid sales growth for over 2 years now. And as you can see from that prediction, we're hoping to have a similar projection with that as well. We have a loyal customer base with a 105 NPS, which is our net promoter score. And that's much higher than the average. We've noticed we have the highest market share of over 33%, and again, highest profit. And so what are we looking to do next? Why do we need that $5 million? We want to start Makos electric scooters. We want help with the manufacturing of it, the process of getting it out there, getting some new sales reps, and hopefully continue to make profit on a new product. So the last question we have is just, are you ready to invest in our company?
Are you in or out?